StraightAllDay.com.
How Donald Trump commands attention. One thing I will tell you at the start here is that this is the first of what will be a three-part series, because Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, businessman Donald Trump, whatever you want to call him, racist, fascist, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever words you want to put on the man, everybody knows who I'm talking about. Donald Trump commands attention in many ways through which I believe, I've been telling you all this since 2016, and I will provide receipts in a moment, that anybody could benefit from if you can separate your feelings from the rational reality. All right, the guy is great at commanding attention, and he's great at doing many things that any of you could benefit from, even if you don't plan on getting into politics or even entrepreneurship or even being known to the world. You could benefit from these things. I talked about this in episode number 1232, what you could, should, and will learn from President Donald Trump. I'm guessing I did that sometime in the early part of his first administration. And let me see, I've talked about him many times over the years, but that was the first time I did it in this feed. But I did a video on YouTube, I remember, talking about why Donald Trump can't be stopped. Let me see if I can find that video, because that one came out in the spring of 2016. And let me look it up right now, because I thought I might have posted it on this podcast feed, but it was not on this feed. But I know I posted it on YouTube. Let me see if I can find it. Why Donald Trump Can't Be Stopped was an episode that I put out 9 years ago, and I'm trying to see when exactly it came out. I don't see when exactly it came out. I would have to play this video. I don't want to make the video play, but it was 9 years ago, and it is there. It's on the record, so y'all can go look that up on YouTube. You don't believe me, but you could take my word for it. Now, I've already shown you how he commands attention by getting you to tune into this episode. All right, the fact you're even listening to this is because you want to hear what I had to say. So I could just say that would be the whole episode. But everybody has an opinion on the man. We can all agree. Every one of you listening, none of you is completely neutral on him. And everyone wants to hear everybody else's opinion on the man, for the very reason that a lot of people are afraid to share their opinion publicly, because you aren't so sure who you might piss off or who you may end up in an argument with because of what you said about him. So what I'm going to do is take the burden off your shoulders today, tomorrow, and the day after, and I'm going to do it myself. Okay, I'm going to explain it. Whether you like him, love him, dislike him, hate him, we can all agree that you cannot ignore him. And again, all of you know who he is. All of you have an opinion. I did an episode on this very point, as I said, 2016. And in this world that we're in today, attention is the currency. We can all agree to that. Donald Trump knows how to command attention whenever he feels like it. And he does this better than almost anyone in the last 25 years. I'm talking in the world, period. Who's attracted attention better than him and kept it as long as he has? I don't think there's anyone. There may be other people who have been able to be popular or draw a whole bunch of attention for a short period of time, a day or two, a week or two, maybe even a few months or a year. He's done it for about 10 years straight, maybe more than that. Now, we'll say at least 10 years straight. So today we're going to talk about how he uses his presence, his language, and his energy to keep himself at the center of conversations. And again, you should think about how you could use any of these yourself. I don't know if you'll be able to use all of them, but you'll be able to use some. Let's get to it. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is how Donald Trump commands attention. And you need to listen to this not thinking about him, but thinking about you, how you can use these. Number one, unapologetic energy. Key term here is unapologetic. This is something that I know I said back in 2016. Now, Donald Trump is not the type of guy who waters himself down. He doesn't water himself down at all. He basically tells you what he thinks. He tells you how he feels, and he tells you how he sees it. He does not water himself down because he wants to be palatable, accepted, or part of the group. Again, do I need to give you examples of this? I think you already pretty much can see this and agree with it. Whether you agree or disagree with what he says is not the point. Point is, he delivers everything that he wants to say with a signature of certainty, with no regards for whether you personally like it or agree with it, whether you accept it or don't accept it, or how you really feel about it. It doesn't really matter to him. That, and when I say you, listen, you may have never had a personal conversation with Donald Trump. So I'm not talking about you personally here. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter who his audience is. He tells you how he sees it, and you adjust to his energy. You adjust to his tone. He does not adjust his tone to you. Most people do the opposite. You look around at who's in the room and you decide how you want to say something based on who's in the room because you don't want to say the wrong thing to offend the wrong person. Donald Trump never has that consideration. He doesn't think about it at all. This is one of the reasons why he commands attention, because he doesn't adjust himself to fit what other people may be expecting. He says what he wants to say and he makes everybody else adjust around him. Do you understand the difference? See, that boldness and unapologetic energy commands attention because people are naturally attracted to conviction. People who speak with a ton of conviction, as if they believe every word that they say, even if they're saying some bullshit, people are attracted to that person, even if they're attracted just to push back against it. Don't you notice that about Donald Trump? About half the people who are always talking about Donald Trump are talking about him negatively. They take everything he says or does, or they claim that he thinks, and they talk about it negatively. But the key is they keep talking about him. They can't stop talking about him because he speaks with so much conviction that it irks them that he doesn't put any modifiers or qualifiers on his speech. So when they really disagree, they can't believe he said that, and they push back so hard because, again, they can't ignore it. This is a command of attention. There's one thing you could take away from Donald Trump, it'd be this point right here. Even his detractors can't stop talking about him. The detractors of every other known person eventually get tired of talking about the person because there ceases to be anything to say. Or you said everything you wanted to say, and usually that the hype around that person kind of quiets down and everybody says, okay, let's move on to the next story. Donald Trump's been the story for 10 years straight. Again, name someone else who's been the story for that long. You can't name a single person. There is no one. Usually when someone doesn't like a person, they'll talk about them to a point, but then they basically do their best to ignore the person, act like the person doesn't exist, and usually the energy around that person's name eventually kind of quiets down and calms down and everybody moves on. Look at Donald Trump's political opponents. Hillary Clinton was the story during that cycle. Nobody talks about her anymore. Joe Biden was the story during that cycle. Nobody talks about him anymore. Kamala Harris was the story during that cycle. Nobody talks about her. Notice that? All his opponents combined, all three of them put together, don't get talked about as much as he does. But notice that with him, people can't help themselves. Again, this is human nature because of the conviction in his speech. That's the key to this point. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how Donald Trump commands attention. Number 2, he uses clear and simple language. Now, this is every one of these points, as a matter of fact, there's a bunch of you listening who need to understand the juxtaposition of these, because a lot of people look at these exact points that I'm going to make and they note them as negative things about Donald Trump. There's a couple things you need to notice. Number 1, the fact that you're noting them as negative things about Donald Trump is exactly my fucking point. You can't stop talking about him. You notice so much about him. Even when you disagree, you got to talk about it. And number 2, many of these things that many of you note as negative about him are because you see them as negative concepts in general. And I'm telling you to switch your thinking and understand how these are actually useful if you could fit your mind around using them. So many of you say, well, you don't want to speak with so much conviction if you're not quite sure what you're saying. I say to the contrary, when you sound like you're sure of what you're saying, even if you're saying something completely stupid, people will follow you and buy into you. So how about you try speaking with more conviction? I guarantee you'll get more people following you. You'll get more converts. You'll get more listeners. You'll get more whatever it is you're trying to get. If you sound like you believe 100% believe in what you're saying, even if you don't believe it, even if you get proven, quote unquote, proven wrong, people will still follow you simply because you said it with so much conviction that they believe that you believe. And since so many people have no belief in themselves, when they come across someone who does believe in themselves, they can't stop following that person. Donald Trump embodies this. All politicians embody it. As a matter of fact, some are just better than others. Now, Donald Trump uses clear and simple language. He does not speak like a politician. He does not speak like some former lawyer who passed the bar exam and got into politics. There's a lot of politicians who have law degrees. Donald Trump speaks like a guy down at the bar. He uses short, punchy, and emotional language, like the everyday man who works construction, and he gets off work, goes to the bar, hangs with his friends for an hour or two, then goes home, has dinner, goes to sleep, wakes up, and does the same thing again the next day. Donald Trump talks like that. This makes his words easy to remember. It makes his ideas easy to digest and understand, and everything he says is repeatable, and it draws reactions. Here's the key thing that you need to understand about all these things that I just said about Trump and his communication. His communication level, the level upon which he speaks, the lexicon he uses is so simple that it cannot be misinterpreted. and it lands on the ears of the masses of people. When you're trying to reach a mass of people, you can't sound too smart. You don't want to use words that are too big. You don't want to show off your ability to articulate, because you'll start going over people's heads. They can't follow what the hell you just said. What word was that? I don't know what that word means. People don't know what words mean that you say. They can't follow you. This is the problem for a lot of you advanced education holders, is that you want to sound too smart. You're trying to impress your advanced degree holding friends. The problem is there are not enough of them for you to reach the masses. You want to reach the masses, you got to keep it simple. Simple language. Again, short, punchy, emotional, easy to digest, things that are repeatable and things that draw reactions. You want that, you got to speak on a simple level on which everybody gets you. Donald Trump does this easily. He does it without even trying. I don't think he even thinks about the fact that he's doing it. It's just his natural way of speaking. Keep in mind, everybody, especially those of you who want to get better at communication, simplicity is sticky. Simplicity is sticky. Simple ideas stick, they last, and they travel. Simple ideas stick, they last, and they travel. Complex ideas do the opposite. They don't stick. They're hard for people to grasp. They do not last because they can't be passed down from one generation to the next, because you need a whole lot of smart people to do that, and we don't have enough of them. And they can't travel because, again, there are not enough smart people in long spaces apart from each other for ideas to travel. You want an idea to travel, you got to keep it super, super, super simple, so that through the telephone game, it doesn't get messed up. See, Make America Great Again doesn't get messed up through the telephone game. If I told you and you told somebody, they told somebody, they told somebody, and it got passed around through 3,000 people, the message would still be the same by the time it got to the end of the chain, because it's a simple message. Do you understand? The challenge that a lot of politicians have is a lot of politicians are highly educated people. All right? Most of the people you see in politics have at least a 4-year degree. Many of them have advanced degrees, and many of them think they're really fucking smart, which is fine. You can think that you're smart. You can actually be smart. All right, great. The problem is when you think that you're smart and your identity is based around being smart, the problem becomes every time you talk, you're trying to show off how smart you are. And then the issue with that is you're talking to a bunch of people who are not as smart as you. They can't understand what you're saying, but you can't turn it off because your whole identity is based around sounding smart. When in reality, if you want to reach the masses, you have to talk at a simple level. But if your identity is based on talking at an advanced level, well, you can't do it. You can't turn it off. All right, that's the problem. Donald Trump's opponent in the 2024 election, Kamala Harris, she can't turn it off. She can't turn off sounding smart. Well, there's a joke in there that I'm not even going to tell. The issue is she understood the task, which was, if I'm going to win presidency, I had to simplify my language. The problem is when somebody like her at 60 years of age tries to start talking in a way that is not natural for her, it's obvious that it's not natural, and it's obvious that she's trying, and it's obvious that she fumbles. She fumbled over and over again trying to talk simply because she can't do it. She got 40 years of seasoning of trying to talk smart, so when you ask her to talk simple, she can't do it. She failed. Some people can do it and they're naturals at it. Look at someone like Barack Obama. He's a natural at talking simple, even though he probably has some complex ideas in his mind. He understands when I'm talking to the masses, I can't talk like that. It's going to go over their heads. I can't win an election talking like that. He won 2 elections. Why? Because he used simple language that's easy to follow and easy to understand by people who are not nearly as intelligent as he is. So many politicians, college educated people, many with advanced degrees. I've talked about this many times in bashing the educational system. And a lot of people who hold advanced degrees tend to use those degrees as part of their personal identity. I'm not knocking you for having a degree, but you got to be careful. All right, who are you trying to reach? If you're only talking to other people who also have degrees, talk however you want. But if you're trying to talk to people who don't know what you know, you got to learn how to simplify your language. Donald Trump simplifies naturally. See, a lot of you smart people, you want everybody to know how smart you are every time you open your mouth. This is a problem. Right? It's a problem because, again, people can't understand what the hell you're saying. You're talking to the masses. You're trying to get 100 million people to vote for you. All right, you can't do this. Okay? If you don't have the natural skill of talking simple, then you fumble all over the place trying to talk simple. Again, look at former Vice President Harris when she tried to do it. All right, she fumbled the ball over and over again because she just doesn't have the ability, which is why we're not going to see her at that level again. But different story for a different day. We'll get to that maybe in 2028. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how Donald Trump commands attention. This is part 1 of what will be a 3-part series. Number 3, Donald Trump is polarizing on purpose. This is another one that a lot of you will have trouble absorbing and accepting. Polarizing on purpose. What does polarizing mean? It means saying something that you know half the people are going to love it and half the people are going to hate it, but you're not saying something that's so in the middle that people say, all right, that's cool, and they kind of forget it. Donald Trump doesn't talk like that. He says things that he knows you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, but either way, you're going to feel some way, you're going to have a response, maybe even a reaction. He does this on purpose, and he has no problem doing it because he doesn't mind polarizing the audience. Problem that a lot of you have is that you don't want to polarize your audience. So you say nothing, or you say little, or when you finally do say something, you say something that's so in the middle that it makes no impact. So nobody remembers anything that you said. They don't even remember that you spoke. They might not even remember you. Donald Trump knows that trying to please everybody is a losing strategy. You become invisible when you try to be everything to everybody. You probably have heard some version of that. Instead, what he does, he leans into polarization because he knows it guarantees him attention. Even if everybody hates him for what he said, it guarantees him attention. Hate is attention. Love is attention. Nice is not attention. Nice gets ignored. That was cool what you said. That gets ignored. It gets forgotten. When Trump speaks, half the room cheers and half the room boos him. But everybody's focused on him. They're cheering him or they're booing him, but they're all focused on him. While this is a very simple idea, anybody can use this. Most people are incapable, ineligible, and basically afraid to do this because most of you don't want to deal with the negative backlash that comes from half the audience. See, most of you don't have a problem with saying something that everybody cheers for you. The problem you have is that the other half of the room that isn't cheering for you, you don't want to deal with them. But here's the good news. Look at Donald Trump. If you get half the room cheering for you, the people who boo you, the people who cheer for you will deal with them for you. You don't have to deal with them. Does Donald Trump deal with them? Not really. He doesn't spend most of his time attacking the people who are booing him. His supporters do that. His supporters fight the people who are booing him. Now, why do they fight the people who are booing him? Did he pay them to do it? No. All he did was get them to accept his point, and they love his point. And the people who hate his point push back, and the people who love the point say, how could you not love that point? They do the fighting for him. This is what happens when you polarize. Everybody's engaged. And everybody's engaged around you, half of them liking you, half of them hating you, but they're all engaged. But you got to be willing to polarize. You got to be willing to say what's on people's minds in a way that they're like, okay, somebody's actually keeping it fucking real. Donald Trump does this. Most politicians don't. He doesn't keep it real on everything, but he keeps it real enough. Compared to most politicians, he does a lot more than most of them. Anybody can use this. Again, the issue many of you have is that negative backlash that's inevitably coming. Can you deal with that? Can you deal with that negative backlash that's coming back your way? You are guaranteed to garner this when you polarize. You speak on a subject that you know people have strong feelings but differing opinions on. If you open your mouth and talk about it, you're going to polarize your audience. And you know you're going to. Listen, doing this very episode right here. I'm doing a 3-part series on how Donald Trump commands attention. Just the framing of this episode is I'm telling you something positive about him because commanding attention is a positive thing, right? So there are people listening to this right now who don't like the fact that I'm saying it. There are people who are saying, I'm not going to listen to Dre anymore because he says something neutral about Donald Trump or he's talking about Donald Trump in some type of neutral or even a positive light. I can't believe that he's doing this. And you have a problem with it. All right, so the fuck what? But there are other people listening to this saying, well, some of you are fans of Donald Trump, so you like the fact that I'm saying this. And some of you are listening to this and you're actually getting the educational value of it because I'm explaining to you it's not really about him. I'm using him because all you know who he is. I'm using him as an example, as a frame. But this is really about ways that somebody who all of you know through real life example is doing things that any of you could use. That's really what this is about. Now, how many of you is objective enough to that's the reason that you're listening? I'd say maybe about 3% of the audience. The rest of you, you like Donald Trump, so you don't mind that I'm saying this. And the rest of you like me enough that even though you don't like Donald Trump, you're going to bear listening to this in the next 2 episodes. I appreciate you. So this is a very simple idea. Anybody can use this. Can you deal with the negativity? Okay. Trump is immune to the negativity that other people throw at him. We'll come back to this later on in the series. He is not bothered by the negativity people throw at him. He just keeps moving regardless. And this is a power move, not jumping at every piece of bait that gets thrown at you negatively. Now, does Donald Trump actually engage with people who are negative towards him? Yes, he does. Some of you are listening to this like, Jerry, how are you saying that? he goes at people who talk about him all the time. Well, think about how often he goes at people who talk about him, and then think about how many people talk negatively about him overall. So if you look at the numbers overall, Donald Trump responds to less than 1% of the negativity thrown at him. So really, he doesn't respond. Now think about how much negativity thrown at you've ever responded to. What's your percentage? For most humans, that percentage is somewhere around 80 to 100. For him, it's less than 1% because he has so many people saying negative stuff about him. He says one negative thing about somebody a day. He says 10 negative things about 10 different people every day. That's still less than 1% of the negativity thrown at him. Do you understand? Most people are incapable of just continuing to move and ignoring negativity being thrown at them, especially negativity that may be on a personal level or negativity that is consistent or negativity that's getting a lot of attention. There are people who say negative stuff about Donald Trump and he gets a whole lot of attention. He gets a lot of engagement and impressions on the internet. He can't respond to all of it because it's too much of it. And he doesn't respond to all of it. And a lot of it he doesn't respond to, not because he doesn't see it, but because he just doesn't care. That's a skill. Most people are not capable of this. This is the reason why many people keep their strongest opinions. Some of you listen to this right now. You keep really strong opinions that you have to yourself. It's not that you don't have an opinion. It's just you keep it to yourself because you don't want to deal with the backlash, because you don't know how the room's going to respond. And for some of you, I understand. You're in certain environments where it might make sense to keep your opinions to yourself. He's in an environment where you would think it makes sense to keep strong opinions to yourself. He said, fuck it, I'm going to put it out there anyway, and look at what happened. You got to have balls to do these things, folks. As simple as that. But tomorrow we're going to get into more of this. Let's recap topic. The topic today, which is part 1 of our 3-part series, how Donald Trump commands attention. Number 1, unapologetic energy. This is something I know I talked about in 2016. He does not water himself down to be palatable, acceptable, or a part of the group. He doesn't mind that people disagree with him. He tells you how things are based on how he sees it. And if you disagree with it, that's fine, but he's still going to say it. Point number 2, he uses clear and simple language. Remember that simplicity is sticky. If you want your message to stick, you have to keep it simple enough that people can remember it, digest it, and repeat it without having to write it down or have you tell it to them again. Number 3, polarizing on purpose. He does not mind saying something that he knows half the room will love and half the room will hate, because the people who hate it are going to get pushed back against, not by him, but by the people who loved it. Now, when you try to be in the middle and you try to say things that are neutral enough that nobody's pissed off, the good news is nobody will be pissed off. The bad news is everybody's going to forget what the hell you said within 30 minutes of you speaking. And then, therefore, you're forgotten. Now you got to go talk again. He doesn't mind polarizing the audience, and he doesn't really care about the negative backlash. For the most part, 99% of it, he ignores it. And he just keeps moving anyway. Tomorrow, we're going to get into part 2 of this series. Between now and then, you want to start using these things, you want to develop or start using the balls that you already have for using this stuff and saying what you really think and being who you really want to be, so that you can start doing things the way they need to be done and live the way you want to live. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and get to working with me directly. Work on your game. Dre all day.